Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the T.O.A podcast. I am your host, Onvermel, and I'm greeted here today with Zack-ta once again. It is one of those days again. We have gone to Zack-ta. We went to Ek. We went to How One, and now we're back to this bozo.
Yeah, whoever saw that coming? I'm amazed, Despite the fact we live together, I did not see this coming.
You've been preoccupied, but see, we're going to get to the we're gonna go to now one of your webcomics. I'm gonna let you choose which one you want to talk about.
See, this is why you should have given me some forewarning here.
No, normally I don't give people a choose to walk.
Do I go for the juggernaut of it all, or do I go for the...
Or finally have a chance to talk about Star Wars?
That is true.
Which we really haven't had a chance to do yet.
And I mean, I have it on my mind, because you've referred to it several times during the last one.
Oh yeah, true. And I'm only
I'm
only two comics behind, so I'm more slowly caught up to what readers could read at this very moment. By the way,
this is true.
Link in the description for whatever comic we decide to talk about, as well as if you guys help me get to 100 subscribers, I will bury Anua in the dirt on camera.
Watch.
Do it. But yes, shall we talk about then Amongst the Stars?
A part of me wanted to say that one for later, but at the same time, there's only 4. And
I feel like if we talk about randomly assembled, this conversation will last longer.
Or randomly assembled could also be the one that burns out first, because it's less to talk about.
Because it's a dumpster fire.
I mean, let's be honest,
though. It's an organized dumpster fire.
Because I think Amongst the Stars certainly lends itself to, I think, the most to talk about, because there's more history behind it.
Alright, well then, let's start out just saying, what is Amongst the Stars?
Amongst the Stars, I'm going to say started as a webcomic, Not the typical 4-panelers that we're kind of known for, but, just a list of pictures with dialogue in kind of like, I think, close to a dozen in a row per page.
So a classic webcomic.
Yes, for most of the first, I'm going to call it seasons, because that's kind of just the mindset I'm in.
Hey, it works.
Yep, it works.
Seasons and chapters. Whatever floats your boat. That isn't buoyancy.
Though, nearing the end, I found that the motivation to take pictures and write the story at the same time was very difficult.
It is extremely tiring.
It's weird. Like, my other webcomics, I'll just take the pictures with a very loose idea and write the dialogue as I go. But with Amongst the Stars, I found it very tiring, so I kept it to the loose idea, took a few scattered pictures, that I would like, okay, this is kind of a generic, what's going on. It doesn't be very specific. And then I would just put in a bunch of dialogue on the sides, kind of like the opening scroll of Star Wars, which I think kind of lends itself to...
Yes. Now the viewers actually know it's a Star Wars webcomic.
Yes, Amongst the Stars is a Star Wars webcomic.
There's the question the answer I was looking for. It works, format, talk about it, but, it's not important that it was Star Wars or anything. It's fine.
I figured it was going to come around. Yes, it's a Star Wars webcomic taking place back in the Old Republic. It doesn't necessarily contradict any canon, but it definitely takes place in a point of history that
I think I would count it as tiptoeing and skirting and ballerina.
I would say I'm keeping the rules around, but I'm not really specifying when it happens, and since there's so much history...
How vague can I be that the
only thing that can really pin it to a specific time era is Master Satele, who I used as the Grand Master of the Jedi Council, because A, she is the Grand Master of the Jedi Council. I didn't want to use Yoda, which honestly would have really led a better time frame.
But Yoda was never around Sith, so outside of...
Well, given that he's not a millennia year old and they had been extinct for over a millennia...
Yoda was only around for the rule of 2.
And he didn't even know it until the bitter end. But yeah, so it's like...
the rule of none.
I had to think, and I didn't know who or what to make the Grand Master, because I didn't feel like making Big Bear the Grand Master, so I went with...
Grand Master Big Bear.
So, Amongst the Stars... Unlike my other webcomics, is very heavily based off games you and I played.
A lot of inspiration. Yes, there's been a lot of inspiration.
Not Lego games, but like live action pretend games with our toy lightsabers.
Well, when we were kids, we played games. We were Jedis and the Grand Republic. Well, I don't know if we actually had a specific time frame at those, but we really didn't care. But
no, we bounced back and forth.
Because at least specifically, the comics going on right now are the most, I would say, inspired.
The third season is definitely the most taken right out of our old childhood games. Other ones, like season 1 and has aspects like the concept, go find Zack-ta and beat him. That was always a game, though there was not a specific event that I took. And though there is a very specific game that we did play that I kind of regret not putting in there, but at the same time...
Is this the one with the big cube and the water planet?
The Borg cube sucking up the water of Camino, yes.
That...
It's not actually Camino, I'm just saying Camino.
Oh gosh, later we might have to talk about that specifically later in the podcast, but
we'll come back to this.
But before I would say just to get to you were saying, before I brought you saying what the comic is, which is a Star Wars, comic taking place in the Old Republic. The old Republic. I don't know how old we want to go. But like you were also saying with the format, used to be
it used to be an actual comic with pictures with dialogue. Now it's more like an illustrated novel. There's more dialogue with a few pictures here and there, though. I do try to keep it interesting.
You pretty much post like a page a day.
A minimum of I think there might be one or two that only have like 2 pictures, but minimum is usually 3 per page, though. Some seasons and some pages have more, depending on, the pictures I took and how much dialogue it took to fill up one picture.
Alright, so basically, we got a nice setup of a Star Wars story based in the Old Republic that's vague about when it actually happens, slightly influenced by old games in a picture story format on the same comic theory that posted all of it. So now that people got an idea, now we can get the nitty-gritty. Which we were basically talking about with, inspirations and all that.
Inspiration.
The good stuff.
Yes, there's definitely some direct pulling from games we did, and then there's we did a lot of repetitive games with very little concept that,
I mean, kids be kids,
I took, the concept of let's go fight this Sith and added more around it, or maybe there was, we had phases, we did our Old Republic, or when at Old Republic, then we were New Republic, but then I know I shifted back to Old Republic partially because of the Sith and Jedi.
And I'm pretty sure you can basically find the timeline of that. Up until the point Episode 3 came out, we were all Old Republic, and then once we started playing the Dark Forces games, that's when we moved to New Republic, and then once that got old...
Once we realized we like Jedi and Sith in abundance.
And then we went back to Old Republic.
Because we have to make it make sense in our heads, even if it's non-canon.
Yeah, so I was Grandmaster Big Bear in there.
How can we have a Jedi Council
full of teddy bears
in the New Republic when there isn't really a Jedi Council on Coruscant?
What I still find the funniest part is, in so many situations where, when we were kids, we'd usually be, the highest ranking, person in this. Or, it's oh, I'm the captain of the starship.
Yeah.
I'm the head knight.
Yeah,
There's no king above me. And in this case, no, the Grandmaster was a teddy bear.
That means the Grandmasters didn't get any action. We were the people...
Yoda fixed it.
We were the people who got stuck in situations. The Grandmaster was beyond that.
I never even on the council was surprising. Well, they're not every game. We weren't always on the council.
You forget, our egos say we have to be good. So we were that good.
Okay,
why you were on the council is quite a question.
I gotta at least mention this little bit, which I don't think ever actually shows up in the comics stories, because in the games, we were both council members.
And the certain area.
Which is why with how much laser can you get? Our games, and these weren't even
mid-teens.
No, this is pre-teens. I'm pretty sure.
I don't.
You might have been a teen, but I was still pre-teen when we were doing the.
We'll say 12.
We'll round it up to 11.
All right, we'll say 10 to 12.
10 to 12. Maybe most 13. You might have been a teen or something. Right. But I like this. What do we do for games? We sat down on couches and discussed politics.
I don't really remember. I don't really know what we were discussing.
Giant quotation mark. People say, let's be honest. People say the politics and the prequels were the boring stuff, and yet that inspired her games higher that, and the battle scenes inspired her games more than most.
Honestly, the only thing I remember discussing is a potential spy.
I
like the really
Zack-ta. That was the politics when you were a kid. Discussing a spy units. Sitting down in a council chamber was politics, regardless.
As we've established, these are games, and as we mentioned, Big Bear was the Grandmaster. Yes. So there was at least 3 distinctive teddy bears that we would use in our games. 2 out of 3 of which I've actually got roles in my webcomic.
Well, there's...
One has already appeared. One has yet to appear. Surprisingly enough, though, I didn't feel compelled to make Big Bear the Grandmaster, but that could have been I didn't have a Big Bear part to use.
I feel like that would have been one step too many into the weirdness, perhaps.
Well, different species. What can say there's a bearish-looking species? I just would have to make it more respectable than a Big Bear.
True, it is hard to find a name that's similar to Big Bear, but isn't Big Bear.
We have to admit, it was kind of fitting that Big Bear was the Grandmaster, because Big Bear was, in fact, Hal 1's Big Bear.
That is
Originally.
true. That is true. Big Bear was How One's. I forgot about that fact.
Actually, we can paint a sort of timeline because we were using this when How One no longer lived with us. So I was at least, 18 minus 7.
Well, this would have been after 2007.
Yes, this would have been after 2007.
So 7.
So yeah,
sorry,
I
after
probably
2005.
would. So I
was
probably
when we
would have been
got,
about
so
12
2007.
minimum.
I'm thinking about 2007, roughly when this
Yeah.
would have been all happening, which, you know, it makes sense. A couple years after episode 3 had come out, or like the year after, 2 years after.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll say this, like, you know, I totally had a thought, and then it just completely
Well,
left.
I have a thought that
Good, because I don't.
So with How One, you were saying Android Files was probably one of the most story-focused, driven, like most thought out of the webcomics.
Rather than just meandering about and see where it goes.
And I would say that this is Amongst the Stars is the most planned out because even
I think I did put the caveat that except for maybe this one.
Where How One definitely is planned far ahead,
especially after like the first little bit.
He admits he started very kind of with no real idea where he was going.
We all started like that.
But Amongst the Stars, from the very get-go, was going to follow. I didn't necessarily have a complete. Actually, I think I had the finish before I had some of the other stuff, but I had a bunch of points I wanted to hit, and I just decided I knew how I wanted our story to end, so I already had that in there. Though that I did have.
We both at the same time.
I did actually add like 4 seasons worth of material that I didn't initially plan on because of, well, season 1 and 3 was going to be 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But I felt like I needed a little building up to number 3, so I added season 2.
This is how story creations come around.
Yes. Because I feel like the plot for season 3 works better if you had a little more build up to it. I was actually going to make that the big finish originally, but I'm like, no, the big finish is season 7. That's what I wanted for that.
Mm.
And then the next 3 seasons came out after. I was like, I have a few more ideas, and I feel like this would help wind down the series.
I would definitely say that just having a Star Wars focused story lends itself to having actually stuff planned out, because let's be honest, all our other like comics for the most part are just like are just Lego comics. This one is a Star Wars essentially webcomic that's just using Lego as the
medium to tell, because it's the only way I can write a Star Wars story that I feel right about. Because as much as I love Star Wars, I can't bring myself to write an actual fan fiction story, despite the fact I think randomly Amongst the Stars actually is a pretty decent story.
I mean, it is a fan.
It might not be well written, but because it's more of a webcomic format, I don't feel like a weirdo on the internet.
Oh no, we're all weirdos on the internet. There's no sane people on the internet. There ain't no normies on the internet. But it is, interesting. That's like it's the only one that isn't like Lego focus, which is also coincidentally like also I would say that has the one that has probably the least focus on humor. Well,
I definitely tried from the beginning. I do, if I could end on a punchline, I would. But this was meant to be a story. Humorous characters, don't get me wrong. I find your character in there is my favorite to write because your snarky attitude. Like, I like humorous characters and I like people who have like no filter.
What can I say? The scummier nature of my character just lends itself just better.
Yes.
Let's be honest. Because yes, the main characters to this comic, if we hadn't mentioned before, are basically you and me.
Yes, we are the main characters. And because of this is a webcomic.
If some eagle-eyed people look at the names of these Jedi, they can probably figure out our real names pretty easily.
But you actually have a good idea what the whole, even if you don't know specifically how it's all going to play out, you have a very good idea how every season's once you see it, you have an idea what it's about, just because I've gone over pretty much the first 7 seasons with you, because
yes.
I not so much needed your approval, but I needed to know, like, you agree with this in the sense of, this is how it would play out, or I know there's a couple instances, like, I made a few artistic leaps of my own, but I ran them by. Like, given that I'm trying to tie this all together, I'm like, do you approve of this method? Just like, can you see, would this fit with your character, given the situations that I'm working with?
Which is always nice. I definitely appreciate being involved in the Like I'm like an executive producer. It doesn't actually have any say in anything.
Yeah,
but it's
you're
on
the
there in the
executive
credits.
producer. All you get is your name and
I
the
think there was
credits.
at least one part in one of the later stuff where I did say it does have to be like this, or I think there was like at least one part.
I
where
know
I did.
you had issue with my naming your ship that has yet to appear.
Well, okay,
the
I didn't have
purple.
so much issue, but it was just more so that I was just like, you never asked me for a name, so when you gave it the name,
That's because
Purple,
I thought that was its name.
my first thought was like, oh, he doesn't really have a name, so he just gave it one himself. I'm like, no, it has a name.
With Eck, I didn't know what his ship was called. I thought it might have been the same as his sailing ship, but I confirmed. With you, I had no doubts it was called the Purple Wolf, so I called it the Purple
I mean, don't
Wolf.
worry, the Purple probably sounds like nicer to readers than the Vermel Buck.
I don't think I even want to try spelling that.
Vermel Buck.
Especially on something without a autocorrect.
Yeah, no, that'd be a pain. So no, that's just like a minor thing. That I'm like,
no, I do also know like there were some things that never happened in any of our games. Actually, I can't spoil this because it's happened already.
oh.
But you lose a hand.
Ah, yes.
That was never in a game, but I'm like, Star Wars is known for losing their hands.
Okay, the thing
and I'm
about
like,
that
I can
is,
see you.
it never happened in those games. Back when we were younger, we were
If we
pretending.
had a single glove,
Look,
we used
when we were younger and we pretended to be superheroes. Super Paul, that was my superhero name. Didn't have.
Who could he be?
I believe my left like wrist hand area.
I do remember you having those felts.
I had these like
Interlocking
felt and I wrapped it around my arm. And I was like, oh, I have a robotic arm now.
Which is weird because I always felt more like web shooters.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Spider-Man, I'm pretty sure that did inspire a little bit. Like, I gave a gadget, so, and I think there was another area where a character that I portrayed, I did pretend that I lost a hand or something, or it was a character trait that I stuck onto later, so.
Pirate.
Okay, that is cheating. But, me losing a hand, like, yes, when it came to Star Wars was a creative liberty, but at the same time, it did give homage to me as a person.
And, like, this is something I think our games, and we put a lot of thought into how we translate, like,
we did.
For instance, as I mentioned briefly a moment ago, Star Wars has been known for losing their hand, which makes sense. That's their weapon hand. You disarm them. So it's a good way to cause injury without killing someone. And we put a lot of thought to, when we played each other, we got knocked into every snowbank you can imagine.
Yep.
But I had all these multiple bladed, weird, crazy villains where you tend to have very basic, more brunt force type, and we translate that mean that I was better at actual dueling than you are, and I felt like having you lose a hand actually reflected the fact that you were not nearly as skilled a duelist as I am, even if you're not necessarily a worse Jedi.
I think we did come to the conclusion that I wasn't as well focused or trained as you, which is something I think I came on my mind beforehand. But the thing is, going back to the robotic arm with the superhero character, me, that even translates into I would say my more sketchier side. Because at least in the earlier seasons, the most thing that we've seen about the character is that I'm a bit of a prick, and I'm okay. We embellished the character to being a bit of a speciesist.
Let's be honest. You're writing a story, and you do enjoy humor. You're going to embellish things. Even if you weren't actually that bad, especially in our Star Wars games, it was more your superhero games.
When the superhero games, I was, I believe, a drunk, a gambling, alcoholic, the guy who smoked.
But like
and
in season
still
2,
dance eggs for profit.
We really see. I definitely. But
this is the hero, folks.
You really. You did like that sort of personality, even with more prevalent than others. But we embellish that. But like season 2 really shows your crummier side. You don't hold back your thoughts. You are specious. But it does also. I think it's the one season that really shows your light side.
I mean, if you're going to go extra one way, you gotta balance out a little bit.
Like, I wouldn't say it balances out, but it does show that, underneath this rough, you do actually care a little.
I will admit, like, the fact that, it's like basically my character is basically getting drugged through the dirt a little bit and to be like, yeah, we're making you the worst character. I'm okay with it because, like, you know what? It's making a much more interesting character that is also paying homage or, like, referencing, like, older ways of gaming. Like, also, when you're younger, pretending to be a gambler and a smoker and a drinker, all that was pretty much influenced by Logan from the early X movies. The gambling part, I'm not sure where that came from, though.
We just knew what gambling was.
I think because we just ended up with a bunch of extra monopoly. Actually, no, I bet that was from Ocean's 11.
Let's also be honest. This is my story. I'm the main protagonist. So naturally, also just reflecting how we played, I was the straight man. So having you being the counter to that, just makes sense, even if it's a little
You've always seen me as a bum as it was before.
I mean, yeah, there's history between the two of us, and it's not
Let's
explained.
be honest. You writing me as the scummier, less respectable person in society. I'm pretty sure you come straight from the heart from you. Straight from the heart.
Oh yeah, I speak solely from life.
This is pure art. This is pure expression of feeling emotion.
Yes.
Amongst the stars, the most artistic.
But
one.
like, for a story that has been planned out, I have really done my best to work in every character kind of plot sort of thing that we've done.
Except
like
the Borg Cube one.
that.
Okay, by the way, just before quick things, it's not a literal Borg Cube. It was just inspired by a Borg
I
Cube.
think it was bigger than a Borg cube, though.
Yeah, I think it was like several.
Basically, think more square Death Star.
But a little bit smaller.
But instead of a long green laser pointing out, thinking of a long green straw coming in.
It sucked up the moisture from a planet.
So
that's where Tatooine was. Why is a desert?
I guess since it doesn't exist in the comic and they've already appeared, as I said, like every character we've created or played, I've tried to work into story, and that much is true.
There wasn't that many, let me tell you.
Actually, I have quite a few. Though there are a few just random Lego fig barbs I put into there because they filled nice roles. A lot of the Sith, Jedi, or most of the Sith and Jedi are characters we invented as kids or like had very brief appearances here or there. Is enough to leave a mark in my mind. But two, Nidiki and Kret. They were two...
Nidhiki, I believe.
Sorry, Nedhiki.
Nedhiki.
Nidiki, but you really emphasize the Ned.
Also,
Nedhiki.
This is the bottom part of the podcast. Nidhiki and Kret.
Nidiki, Kret.
Let's just guess people where those names came from.
There was a phase where we named a lot of our Jedi characters after, and even...
Oh, right. I forgot there was like T.O.A. and Conger.
My own name, Zack-ta, was just Zack-tan without the N. For a Dark Jedi.
We're the best at plagiarism.
So, that, and then, we had this four-armed creep with 4 legs and a big brute. I eventually named mine Nedhiki because resembles Nidiki, and we were in that phase.
And I'm like, well, also, mine's the Krekka to his Nidiki.
Yes,
so,
but it was only when I started writing the story that I called yours Kret.
I don't think I ever had a name. I'm pretty sure it was just the
You or I actually came up with a name before Kret.
Oh, probably.
But I forgot what it was, so I had to come up with a new name. So I went with Kret.
I probably did come up with a name at one point.
No, actually, I remember coming up with a name, running it past you, I think, and thinking, like, this is a good name.
I think it's just one of those things where, like, back in the day, I always would just refer to him as the Big Brute.
Yes.
The Brute. That's all he was.
So, yeah. These two, we came up while camping at Waterton Lake.
National Park in Alberta.
We were in full... This was the most... We were sort of starting getting plot. We had lightsabers we liked.
We were about 10.
we're old enough to kind of roam free through the park to swing our lightsabers. And, we invented some Dark Jedi or Sith. And, the initial plot was Nidiki hated or feared water, so he was draining the water from the planet using a giant cube, which I actually did make one of those cubes on Lego once.
Oh, yeah, I kind of remember that a little bit, I think.
It was a big, great base plate with mostly red walls with a giant recession in the middle.
Yes, yes.
I don't remember ever playing a game in that, but I remember building that.
Also, the one reason why Waterton Lake was really nice for this, as we'll get to a little bit more into this story of what inspired this, was where we were specifically also, our campground was really close to like the edge where, and there was a little bit of a river where there's a decent hill, so as a kid you could really pretend that's a cliff. And we have the certain weather that showed up that day. What kind of weather did we have?
Windy.
And rainy.
And when you're a kid, that's the best weather.
You didn't have thunder or lightning, so your parents weren't worried about you being out there, but it was like strong winds and a lot of rain. Like, not like a good downpour. And if you're kids, and after especially seeing the battle Helm's Deep in the second Lord of the Rings movie where rain in a battle just makes everything cooler now.
I don't think I needed a movie for that.
I think for me it helped. The epicness.
Yes. But, it was just awesome. So, yeah, Nidiki and Kret, that was their backstory. Nothing special, just weirdos. I did put in Nidiki's biography in the character blurbs that he is afraid of water, though it never pops up in story.
That might be a species thing, though.
Looking back on how we played them, I'm like, I don't feel like I can make this story work.
Well,
I could write this story, but I feel like the concept of the story would just be so...
That's a Star Trek concept.
It's a Star Trek concept.
A villain of the week, they're sucking in water from a planet, we gotta stop it, Captain.
I could do that story, no problem. I might even make a spin-off around Assemble that just for the hell of it, but I couldn't do that because, like, for the seriousness and realisticness of this story I was going for, I'm like, I can't. I don't think I could work sucking the water off a planet. I don't think I could justify it. I'm sure I could if I really sat down.
It's like a supervillain or Star Trek. It's really not a Star Wars.
I saw it more as I wanted to work the characters in. With some
some
aspects about the characters, like Nedeki is missing an arm, so I wanted to show him losing his arm. Though back when we originally invented him, he'd always had the robotic arm.
That one,
But I never cut his arm off. He just had a robotic arm. I just chunked my hand up the sleeve.
I don't remember that part, which is funny because Kret is half robotic, pretty much. He's he's a solid cyborg. He's got a little lightsaber arm.
But how I use them now is because I think there were some games where they would be basically work with other of our Dark Jedi or Sith, and I'm like, how? I actually saw them more as Dark Jedi, not full-on Sith, but I'm like,
I don't think we ever saw them as
They
Sith.
work very much by themselves. I'm like, I actually decided that they are essentially bounty hunters. That, there are so many Sith users. Why wouldn't there be the odd one that's just out for his own personal gain, rather than like control and power? These guys are out for wealth, and I like that twist on it. And so they get introduced as hired bodyguards of like the highest order, rather than being a Jedi or
Let's be
Sith.
honest, if you're going to hire someone who can use the Force and lightsaber is a pretty hot commodity,
Yeah,
especially in a world with a lot of Jedi.
Yeah. So I'm like, I like that idea. I feel like it works, and I wanted to work them into the story without having to bring in water-sucking cube.
Also, I'll say this: I've been really looking forward to seeing them again because I know they're going to pop up at some point. Because my character at this point in the comic has not met either of them. Only you have.
This is correct.
And so I'm waiting for my debut to my arch nemesis.
And I mean, not to spoil the future, but
everyone dies.
These two characters very specifically were reoccurring villains, especially since we, they were like them and Zack-ta were the exclusive like Sith Dark Jedis we had at Waterton. So, reflecting our childhood, they reoccur.
We liked interconnecting games too. It's spelled over into our story making where everything must connect. No, definitely.
Like we had all these different games and whatnot, so I'm like, well, I want to tell a Star Wars story. This is the specific story. How much can I sew together? How much? Like I want to use as much as I can. And honestly, other than the floating cubes, which is the most distinctive thing that you pointed out and disappointed.
Sorry,
I actually managed to get most of it.
Another thing I believe happened roughly the same time that Ned Hickey and Kret basically got created was, I think that was the first camping trip, or at least one of the first, that we had our new wooden lightsabers that our dad made us. Because unlike the actual toy lightsabers, the wooden lightsabers had thinner handles, they had nice long blades, they felt more real.
They were lighter, they were our own unique design, and they didn't have a specific blade color, so we could pretend they were different lightsabers.
Maybe easier being villains.
Maybe what?
Easier being villains. Because I remember for some reason that event was always, I think it was like, that game of us at Waterton, I'm pretty sure no other game ever lived up to the epic status. Like we had like the coolest lightsabers at the point, we had the cool villains with a cool plot, cool atmosphere.
Waterton doesn't just have a lake and a river.
Probably died.
It had a waterfall in the campsite with its path that zigzagged up. Let me tell you, that was the funnest place to swim.
And what can I say? I probably died at the end of that story at some point, more likely, or I got injured.
But like,
I got stabbed a lot as a character.
This isn't webcomic related, but I have to say it's interesting that we can pretend a yellowy tan stick is any color blade on the sun, yet we can't pretend a green blade is any color under the sun.
That green blade was designed to be green blade. The sticker just so happened to be yellowy tan beige,
That's true. And I had something that was gonna.
Well, while you're thinking that out, definitely it is interesting that yours is the only kind of just change the subject a little bit here now that we've essentially had a chance to talk about at least a lot of the inspiration.
Yeah.
Is like that. What definitely differs your comic is from less is I can't really call it a comic.
I'd almost call it a web story at this point.
At this point, yeah, the web story, it's unlike all the other stuff we have in comic theory. Sure, what's it called? Android Files has a slightly different format of a single page panel.
But it definitely feels more comic.
But it's still like a comic where it's like image with speech bubbles. Yours is very much actually written text with just pictures to emphasize.
Yeah.
It is just a web story.
I basically took the pictures of an idea in
earlier. It's the only one that isn't a Lego story first and foremost. It is a Star Wars story.
Just being told with Lego
Which,
because
again,
that's what I have.
You could also be seen because it is a Star Wars story first. It's technically the only really, I would say, fan fiction. Because technically, all the other stories are Lego stories, so calling them fan fictions is, let's be honest, if you're going by the definition of fan fiction as a pre-established story that you're basically making your own version of, I guess Barnacle Tales is also like that, but Barnacle Tales is also heavy in the Lego aspect. It's like one of the few times I would say we jumped out of Lego as a creative outlet.
This is probably the first one that's story for first, goofy
No,
second.
story forced.
Story forced.
Story forced. Story first coming this never.
The story's forced.
The story is forced, but perhaps not. That was a bit of a word jumbleness. Yeah. But I would say I do appreciate that you've even managed to find, ex Jedi persona in there too.
Yep. It's not obvious.
I have no idea if he's going to show up a second time.
But yes, as of this point, Ek has made a very, very brief appearance in one comic, just randomly talking to Pual, because, I have a lot of Jedi, and I'm like, here's a good place to work in people who don't necessarily, again, because I have made a Jedi of my best friend, and he's never played Star Wars with me, but I'm like, I have a figure representing that, so I'm going to throw him in there for, like, a reference or two, and in later seasons, you will find, if you know other webcomics, or you know my brothers, you will see a lot of characters in the background like, hey, I'm not just using my random figs because, well, I only have so many figs, and like, I just need random background. Like, no, I actually got to the point where I'm specifically choosing characters from certain webcomics to put here. I even made copies of, like, the how one's figs to put in the backdrop because they're, like, his Townland Jedi. Like, I put them there.
The cameos are real, man.
Yes, the budget was good. But, like, one thing I do know about Amongst the Stars was it's basically my pet project, my dream project, vanity project.
I know what you're saying, but I don't know what the exact word.
It's my, like, it's the one I want to be
pet
good.
Project almost sounds close, but
I think it's vanity project.
Nah, well, I know what you're getting on.
Yeah, it's my one. So I went above and beyond. Sure, I found the cheapest way possible to do, like, visuals, but, like,
it costs nothing.
It costs nothing
but time.
But, like, if you read Randomly Assembled, you won't see lightsaber effects anywhere, even though you see lightsabers. Amongst the Stars, and some of them have a lot of lightsabers, I wanted to have the glowing lightsaber effect. And, I would do more cropping of images for space scenes, and that's one thing about the new format. It really does nice space scenes.
That is very true, and actually, I'll just say that as well as, like, just the picture taking, the way your story's going, I would say is lent you to basically being more creative with actual picture taking, like angles and lighting.
Yeah.
Especially with this last couple comics with myself and the story at hand.
So
has had some of the most creative ones, which I love.
Trying to keep a Lego figure's identity secret, so you and reflect the old games we played. I'm trying to take a picture of someone in the dark while keeping their identity secret. So, I turned the lights off, had a light shining out, not directly through the doorway, but outside the doorway, so there's just enough light to make out shapes.
Alright, yeah. So, I think we've got a good sense of what the comic is. Hopefully we've intrigued people. So, as per usual, I'm going to, ask a couple comments. Like, one, do you have an end in sight for this? And as well, what kind of ambitions do you still have?
Well, there is a definitive end in sight. I have currently I'm close to finishing the 8th season. I'm posting the 3rd right now. There is a 10-season plan. I will fully end the story after 10 seasons. That is the definitive plan. Though as the ambitions, depending on how much energy I have, there are a few random sides, like one-season stories that I would like to tell if I feel inclined, because I have some other stories that, I could have worked them into this, but it's like, they wouldn't be following you or I, they would actually be, like, following other characters we encountered, and there's one specifically I think is a nice concept I'd like to follow, is, we've got a lot of Jedi, we have a lot of stuff, but what if there's, like, regular religion, because let's be honest, the Force is essentially religion.
Well, basically, yeah.
Then what if there's people who deviated from the Jedi Order to start their own order, believing that the Jedi might be a little misled, off, wrong. But not being full onto the dark side, just seeing from a different point of view.
but not quite Grey Jedi,
Yes.
or more focusing on a Grey Jedi story more so, I guess.
Not even a Grey Jedi, just like a group of Jedi who deem themselves Jedi, who see themselves good, but they don't agree necessarily with the ideology of
Definitely could
the
be
Order.
very
It's like
interesting.
maybe there should be less interference in public affairs than more.
We should all become hermits now. All
Yes.
thousands of us hermits in our little caves in the ground, just like hobbits. I don't know what Jedi have hobbits together. No, but that's really interesting. I hope that at least some of you decide to check it out, assuming anyone's gone to this far in the podcast. That is just How1. Thank you, How1 and General Pitbull for making it this far. We really appreciate your couple views. Please tell all your friends, everyone that you know.
Actually, in this case, yeah, do please tell your friends. This is my pride and joy, and I do actually feel like it's a reasonable read if you can,
Well,
find
definitely
the
of all the
time.
comics, it's probably had some of the most commenting interaction with viewers.
This is the only webcomic that has more comments than comics. And I think that would even be the case if I wasn't making a point to put a comment in almost every single page. Because there are 2 or 3 people who have actually been actively commenting
And following the story.
Yes. But given that it's Star Wars, and I'm proud of it, and it may not be the world's greatest, but like, if you don't think of it as a Lego comic, you think of it as just a story, I actually think it's pretty decent.
But I mean, I do feel like the Lego helps it if, let's say, there is parts that come off as too fan fiction-y. The Lego aspect kind of like balances.
You have to remember,
that out.
this is reflecting games we played, and the Lego is a reminder that these are games.
These are games we played and these are toys.
Exactly.
But there's a good story behind. So yeah, like I said, I implore everyone to watch it. And now, actually, it's been kind of fun, talk about this again. It's always a fun subject. And maybe some point further down the line, we might discuss this more in detail after it's all done.
I definitely wouldn't mind if once I'm done creating it all, if we could
make a documentary. We'll get on it.
I was gonna say we could what's it mean when 2 people work together?
Cohorts?
Collaborate. Collaborate to make like YouTube videos, basically reenacting the stories, like the old radio shows.
Ah, yes. And welcome back to Amongst the Stars.
It costs nothing!
Last we had our heroes. They were stuck in a tornado storm fighting demonish dark Jedi for fighting over water. Who will win? Tune in after these messages.
And who knows, we might add a few more things in there just for your sake.
Oh, yes, thank you. But no, this has been fun. And thank you all people for listening. I've been Onvermel. This has been the T.O.A. Podcast, and we are retiring from the night.